When it comes to disturbing an audience, a well-executed plot twist is one of the most effective tools in a filmmaker's arsenal. Flipping the whole story on its head and pulling out the rug from underneath can make an entire film one hell of an unsettling experience, and this device is frequently an effective way to create an atmosphere of dread and hammer home a movie's themes. In terms of the most chilling plot twists out there, some might understandably think first of the horror genre. Nevertheless, horror movies don't have a monopoly on messed up plot twists. I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 more disturbing plot twists in non-horror movies. Number 10, Snowpiercer. Gilliam was in on it. Kicking off the list in this much underrated plot twist from Bong Joon-ho's brilliant post-apocalyptic thriller Snowpiercer, which revolves around a train circling a frozen Earth. With tragic inevitability, the train has become a segregated class society, and those at the back of the train are living in squalor. Curtis leads an uprising against those in charge of the train. However, by the time he reaches the front, nearly all of his allies are gone, including his close friend and mentor, Gilliam. In the film's unforgettable final half hour, Curtis finally meets the leader of the train, Wilford, who reveals that Gilliam was actually allied with him. He and Gilliam conspired to incite a rebellion, and the purpose of this was actually to reduce the population of the train's tail end to manageable levels. All along, Curtis was never really a revolutionary. He was just a plaything of those who ruled over him. And this twist was a clever way to hammer home just how corrupt and evil the Snowpiercer society really was. Also, what a horrendous betrayal this was. Compared to this, Lando Calrissian stabbing Han Solo in the back kinda looks like nothing. Number 9. Promising Young Woman. Ryan was involved in Nina's death. Promising Young Woman, Emerald Fennell's shattering debut as writer-director, is a provocative and chilling meditation on violence against women that tells the story of Cassie's crusade of vengeance against those responsible for the sexual assault and eventual suicide of her best friend, Nina. Around halfway through the film, Cassie realizes that her quest for revenge is destroying her life, so she decides to move on. A heartwarming love story unfolds between her and her former medical school colleague, Ryan, who comes off as a thoroughly sympathetic character, the antithesis of the various toxic characters throughout the rest of the film. It's so satisfying to see Cassie healing, until the terrible truth emerges. Cassie receives some footage that shows Ryan witnessed Nina being attacked and allowed it to happen. Upon being shown the footage, Ryan's true colours emerge. He doesn't apologise or take any responsibility, and focuses on trying to gaslight Cassie into loving him again. The way in which Fennell charmed viewers with what seemed like an adorable love story, and then crushed them with this revelation, was damn cruel in the best kind of way. Number 8, we need to talk about Kevin. Kevin's final 2 victims. We Need to Talk About Kevin is very much one of those non-horror films that's considerably more disturbing than most actual horror movies are. Its lead character is Eve, a once successful writer now living an isolated existence and shunned by her community due to the murderous actions of her son, Kevin. The film is told in non-linear fashion, and though this isn't shown fully until near the end, it is gradually made clear that Kevin perpetrated a high school massacre and killed many fellow students. It's a consistently bleak watch that, like most great films, saves the heaviest blows for the end. The scene depicting the aftermath of the massacre is grim stuff indeed, and it immediately seems like this is the crescendo We Need to Talk About Kevin has been building towards, except the film has one final shock left in store. Before going to the school, Kevin also killed his father Franklin and little sister Celia. An almost catatonic Eve finds their bodies, riddled with Kevin's arrows, in their garden when she returns home from the school. As if the sight of lovable old John C. Reilly and an adorable kid character lying dead wasn't horrible enough, this twist came out of nowhere. While Franklin and Celia hadn't appeared in any of the present-day scenes, voicemails from Franklin were heard, and it was never implied that they were dead. Cheerful stuff this ain't. Number 7, Planet of the Apes. It was Earth all along. More than any other example of this list, it's likely many will know this twist before sitting down for their first viewing. It's such an iconic scene at this point after all. Having said that, does foreknowledge diminish this ending's power? Not by one iota. Protagonist George Taylor, an astronaut marooned on an alien world peopled by talking apes and mute savage humans, desires to understand more about humanity's history on this planet and how they came to be savages. One of the film's ape antagonists warns Taylor that he might not like what he finds, a warning that Taylor only understands once he and Nova, a mute human woman, escape the apes at last. Taylor and Nova come across the remains of the Statue of Liberty, at which point the terrible truth finally emerges. This was never an alien world. It is a future Earth, destroyed after a nuclear war. Nova, oblivious to the statue's significance, watches on in bewilderment as Taylor falls to his knees, screaming, cursing humanity for destroying the world. It's absolutely chilling one of the most haunting and powerful conclusions in film's history. Retrospectively, some commentators have wondered why Taylor doesn't work it out sooner, given that the planet looks like Earth and is populated by humans and apes, but come on, give the guy a break. This was a truth so terrible that he couldn't possibly have considered it, right until it was staring him in the face. Number 6. Memento. Leonard is Teddy's pawn. Memento, a murder mystery that is told both backwards and forwards, is not only the arguable high point of Christopher Nolan's career, it is also one of the smartest movies out there. One of the many things that makes the picture so ingenious is that, despite the fact it ends in the middle of the story's chronology, it still delivers an ultra-satisfying conclusion complete with a shocking plot twist. The protagonist of Memento is Leonard, an amnesiac searching for his wife's killer. Memento's opening, the final chronological scene in the narrative, is Leonard killing his former ally, Teddy, which would lead many to assume Teddy was the killer. The truth is more complicated. The final scene of the film shows Leonard killing another man, but when he starts to doubt that he's killed the right man, Teddy reveals the full truth. Leonard and Teddy caught the real attacker over a year ago, and Teddy, who is a corrupt cop, has been manipulating Leonard into killing those Teddy wants dead. Furthermore, Leonard's wife survived the attack, but thanks to his amnesia, Leonard got her diabetes medication wrong and accidentally killed her. In the end, Leonard leaves himself clues that will manipulate him into killing Teddy later on, dooming himself to repeat this vicious cycle. This brilliantly bleak ending makes Memento quite possibly the saddest film of Nolan's filmography. Number 5. Dead Man's Shoes. Anthony has already been killed. Dead Man's Shoes follows Richard, a former soldier taking revenge on the men who tormented his learning disabled brother Anthony. Directed by the great Shane Meadows, Dead Man's Shoes very much leans into the kind of gritty kitchen sink realism British cinema is often associated with, and the result is a revenge flick that's devoid of catharsis or glamour, sitting proudly alongside the works like Old Boy and I Saw the Devil as one of the most miserable revenge movies of them all. The whole thing is grim viewing, but this plot twist that proves to be the film's most harrowing sequence. While Richard is seen talking to Anthony throughout the earlier sections of the film, it's eventually revealed that the men Richard is hunting actually killed Anthony already, and we've just been seeing him talking to a hallucination. It's an absolute gut punch, and the flashback that shows Anthony's death is particularly hard to watch. Plot twists involving a character talking to a hallucination have been done a fair amount, and some of them are entirely predictable. For example, Secret Window. But this one isn't at all, and it's a shock that'll leave everyone rattled. Number 4. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Bruno and Shmuel die. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, based on John Boyne's novel of the same name, tells the story of the friendship between Bruno and Shmuel. Shmuel is a Jewish boy imprisoned in a concentration camp. Bruno is the son of the Nazi who runs it. Though a largely solid historical drama, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is probably the weakest film on this list, and it has, much like its source material, been criticised for its many historical inaccuracies. Arguably, the key reason why the film is still remembered today is that ending. Given that it's told through children's eyes, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is fairly restrained in its depiction of the Holocaust, for the most part. That is likely to lull the audience into a false sense of security, as it eventually delivers one of the most harrowing twist endings of them all. Bruno breaks into the camp to help Shmuel find his father, and the two boys are immediately seized by guards and sent to a gas chamber. The two little boys, not knowing this is the end, hold hands as they die. Since this is a Holocaust film, an unhappy ending of some nature was to be expected, but for those who hadn't read the book, it's unlikely they were expecting anything quite as overwhelmingly bleak as this, especially from what was otherwise a fairly ordinary by-the-numbers movie. Is this one of the most depressing endings ever? Quite possibly. Number 3, Atonement. The fake ending. Atonement has its issues, but it does contain one of the best plot twists of all time, not to mention one of the most upsetting. The film's lead is Brian, a young teenager who has a crush on Robbie, the gardener on her wealthy family's estate. Jealous of this relationship with her older sister Celia, Brienne falsely implicates Robbie for a sexual assault committed on the family estate, and Robbie is sent to prison and then off to fight in World War II. The real offender eventually marries his victim and gets away with it. Years later, Brienne visits Celia and Robbie in London, but they cannot bring themselves to forgive her. Still, at least the couple are finally able to be together, right? No. The truth is revealed in the film's closing scene, and it's heartbreaking. Atonement's final scene sees an elderly Brienne being interviewed about the book that she has written about these events. She explains that the scene with Robbie and Celia reunited was fictitious. Robbie died during the evacuation of Dunkirk, and Celia died during the London Blitz. Having denied them their happy ending in real life, she chose to grant them one in her book. This ending alone makes Atonement, flaws and all, well worth seeing. Number 2, Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. Yes, this one is a documentary, But to hell with it, as Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father, absolutely earns its spot here. Dear Zachary is directed by Kurt Kane, whose close friend Andrew Bagby was murdered by his ex-girlfriend. After she fled to Canada, it turned out that she was pregnant with Andrew's child, named Zachary. Kane then set about creating a cinematic scrapbook for Zachary, a way of knowing the father he'd never meet. Dear Zachary is a masterpiece of editing, and the first hour is presented as a letter to Zachary. Documentaries are supposed to be truthful, and no one unaware of the real case will see the film's big twist coming. While on bail, Andrew's killer was allowed to take custody of Zachary, and when he was just 13 months old, she killed him in a murder-suicide. This reveal is arguably one of the most traumatically upsetting twists in all of film, especially since it actually happened. And, as the documentary explains, it was a completely avoidable death too. The film's consummate editing and heartbreaking exploration of grief make it all the more harrowing, although it is counterbalanced with some positivity. The closing section of Dear Zachary explores the successful efforts of Zachary's grandparents to change Canadian bail laws, pays loving tribute to them, and even represents Kane himself coming to terms with his double bereavement. This sense of hope in the face of horrendous tragedy is perhaps the key thing that will leave viewers weeping. Number 1. The Skin I Live In, Vera, is Vicente. It's not surprising that one of film's upsetting plot twists was delivered by the brilliant Pedro Almodovar. He's a master of royally effed up plot twists, usually involving taboo subjects such as sexual assault or incest. With 2011's The Skin I Live In, he outdid himself. This one centres around Robert Ledgard, a sinister plastic surgeon. He's keeping a mysterious woman named Vera captive at his house, and flashbacks reveal that Robert's traumatic past. He lost both his wife and daughter to suicide. So who is Vera? And why does she look exactly like Ledgard's late wife? It's unlikely anyone was able to guess the answer. Ledgard's daughter suffered a traumatic experience at a party which led to her suicide. And when Ledgard witnessed a young man named Vicente rushing off, he incorrectly assumes that Vicente assaulted her. So he kidnaps Vicente, subjects him to a forced sex change, and transforms him into a replica of his late wife. Messed up doesn't even cover it. Thankfully, Vera, or Vicente, escapes and is reunited with their family, but they'd been captive for 6 years by that point, so it's hardly a happy ending. Many films have tackled the subjects of grief, trauma, and revenge, but few have represented them in such a powerful way as this.